My stepfather said I'd never be part of the real family, so I made sure he'd never be part of it either. I was 12 when my mom remarried, and honestly, I thought things might finally get better for us. We'd been struggling financially since my dad passed away when I was 8, and my mom had been working 2 jobs just to keep our small apartment. When she started dating this guy, he seemed nice enough at first, always bringing flowers, taking us out to decent restaurants, acting like he cared about both of us. Looking back, I realize he was just putting on a show to win my mom over. The first few months after they got married were actually pretty good. We moved into his house, which was way bigger than our old place, and I finally had my own room again. He'd even help me with homework sometimes and took me to a few baseball games. I started thinking maybe having a stepdad wouldn't be so bad after all. My mom seemed happier than she'd been in years, always humming around the house and smiling more often. But then my mom got pregnant and everything changed overnight. Suddenly, I became invisible in my own home. All the attention shifted to preparing for the new baby, and my stepdad started treating me like I was just some random kid who happened to live there. When I tried to join conversations at dinner, he'd barely acknowledge me. When I asked for help with school projects, he'd tell me to figure it out myself because he was too busy getting ready for his real child. The comments started small at first, little jabs about how I wasn't really his responsibility, how I should be grateful he was letting me live in his house. My mom was too caught up in pregnancy hormones and excitement to notice how differently he was treating me. Whenever I tried to bring it up to her, she'd brush it off and tell me I was being too sensitive or that he was just stressed about becoming a father. When my half-brother was born, the divide became even more obvious. My stepdad would spend hours playing with the baby, taking thousands of photos, posting constantly on social media about his perfect little family. But in every single photo, I was either cropped out or not included at all. Family outings became less frequent for me. They'd take the baby to the park or to visit relatives, and I'd be left at home with some excuse about not having enough room in the car or the baby needing quiet time. The worst part was watching my mom go along with it all. She'd gotten so wrapped up in her new role as a mother to his biological child that she seemed to forget she already had a son who needed her attention too. I'd hear them talking late at night about college funds and future plans, and it was always about my half-brother, never about me. When I brought home good grades, barely anyone noticed, but when the baby took his first steps, it was like a national holiday. By the time I turned 14, my stepdad had stopped pretending to care about me altogether. He'd make comments about how I was costing him money, how I wasn't his real son, how I should be grateful for the roof over my head. The breaking point came during a family barbecue when some of his friends were over. I was helping carry food outside when I accidentally dropped a plate of burgers. Instead of just telling me to clean it up, he exploded in front of everyone. He went on this rant about how I was clumsy and irresponsible, how I wasn't really part of the family anyway, and how he couldn't wait until I was old enough to move out and stop being his problem. The worst part was that my mom just stood there, holding my half-brother, and didn't say a word to defend me. His friends looked uncomfortable, but nobody said anything. I felt humiliated and completely alone, even surrounded by all these people. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. I started keeping detailed records of every cruel comment, every instance of favoritism, every time he made me feel like an outsider in what was supposed to be my own home. I wrote down dates, times, and exactly what was said. I also started paying closer attention to my stepdad's behavior, and I noticed some things that seemed off. He'd get mysterious phone calls that he'd take in private, always stepping outside or going to his office and closing the door. He'd come home late some nights with flimsy excuses about working overtime, but I knew his schedule pretty well by then. Sometimes he'd smell like perfume that definitely wasn't my mom's, and he'd shower immediately after coming home on those nights. I started putting pieces together, and I didn't like what I was seeing. I began following him sometimes after school, staying far enough back that he wouldn't notice me. It took a few weeks, but eventually I saw him meeting another woman at a coffee shop downtown. They were definitely more than just friends holding hands, kissing, acting like a couple. I felt sick to my stomach, not because I cared about him, but because I knew this would destroy my mom. She'd already been through losing my dad, and now this man she'd trusted was betraying her too. But then I realized this might be exactly what I needed. I started documenting everything, taking photos from across the street, recording the times and dates of their meetings, even following them to a hotel once. I felt like some kind of private investigator, but I knew I was gathering evidence that could change everything. The hardest part was keeping this secret while watching my mom be so happy and trusting with him. For months, I sat on this information, not sure what to do with it. Part of me wanted to tell my mom right away, but another part of me wanted to make sure I had enough proof that he couldn't deny it or twist the story. I also started noticing other suspicious things. He'd hidden a credit card from my mom, and I'd seen him using it to pay for expensive dinners and hotel rooms. He was literally stealing from our family to fund his affair. The perfect opportunity came when my mom started planning a surprise birthday party for him. She was so excited, spending weeks organizing everything, inviting all his friends and family, even his ex-wife who he'd always claimed to hate. She wanted to show him how much she appreciated him and how happy she was in their marriage. It made me feel even sicker knowing what I knew, but it also gave me the perfect stage for my revelation. I spent weeks preparing my presentation. I organized all the photos, printed out credit card statements I'd managed to photograph, and created a timeline of his affair. I even managed to record one of his phone conversations with the other woman, where they talked about how stupid my mom was for not suspecting anything. I felt like I was preparing for the most important presentation of my life. The night of the party, I waited until everyone had arrived, and my stepdad was giving his speech about how grateful he was for his loving family. He was standing there, holding my half-brother, talking about how blessed he was to have found such a wonderful wife and how much he loved his perfect little family. The irony was almost too much to bear, but I knew my moment was coming. When he finished his speech and everyone was clapping, I stood up and asked if I could say something too. My mom looked surprised, but pleased that I wanted to participate in the celebration. My stepdad looked annoyed, probably expecting me to say something awkward or inappropriate. Instead, I pulled out my folder of evidence and started laying out the truth for everyone to see. The room went completely silent as I methodically presented photo after photo of him with the other woman. I explained how I'd been documenting his affair for months, how he'd been stealing money from our family, how he'd been lying to everyone while pretending to be a devoted husband and father. I even played the recording of his phone conversation where he called my mom stupid and gullible. My mom's face went through so many emotions: confusion, disbelief, anger, and finally heartbreak. She kept looking at the photos, then at him, then back at the photos, like she couldn't process what she was seeing. My stepdad tried to deny everything at first, claiming the photos were fake or taken out of context, but there was too much evidence for him to explain away. His friends and family started leaving one by one, clearly uncomfortable with the drama unfolding. His brother actually came up to me before he left and said he was proud of me for standing up for my mom, which felt incredible. Even his ex-wife, who'd never liked my mom, stopped to tell her she deserved better. Within an hour, the party was over, and it was just the three of us plus my sleeping half-brother. The confrontation that followed was intense. My stepdad was furious that I'd humiliated him in front of everyone, but he couldn't deny what I'd uncovered. My mom was devastated but also angry at him for betraying her, but also at me for keeping this secret for so long. She felt like everyone had been lying to her, and in a way, she was right. But I explained that I'd wanted to be absolutely sure before I destroyed her world. What happened next surprised everyone, including me. Instead of falling apart, my mom got angry in a way I'd never seen before. She started going through his things, finding more evidence of his lies and financial deception. She discovered he'd been hiding money in a separate account, probably planning to leave her eventually. She found receipts for expensive gifts he'd never given her, vacation bookings for trips he'd never mentioned, even a lease agreement for an apartment across town. The divorce process was swift and brutal. My mom had hired a lawyer who specialized in cases involving infidelity and financial fraud. With all the evidence I'd gathered, plus what she'd found during her own investigation, my stepdad didn't have much ground to stand on. The prenup he'd insisted on before their marriage ended up working against him because it included clauses about faithfulness and financial transparency that he'd clearly violated. But the most satisfying part was watching him realize that his actions had consequences beyond just losing his marriage. His affair partner wanted nothing to do with him once everything became public. Apparently, she'd thought he was separated, not actively cheating. His employer found out about his financial irregularities and started their own investigation. Several of his friends stopped speaking to him after witnessing his behavior at the party. Meanwhile, something amazing happened with my mom and me. Going through this crisis together actually brought us closer than we'd been since before she remarried. She apologized for not protecting me better, for not seeing how he'd been treating me, for getting so caught up in her new life that she'd neglected her first child. We had long conversations about everything that had happened, and she made it clear that I was her priority now. The house felt different after he moved out. It was quieter, but in a good way peaceful instead of tense. My mom started making decisions about our life without having to consider his opinions or demands. She redecorated his office into a study space for me, and she started including me in family photos again. Most importantly, she made sure I knew that I was an essential part of our family, not just someone who happened to live there. My half-brother was too young to understand what was happening, but as he got older, my mom made sure he knew the truth about why his father wasn't around. She never spoke badly about him in front of my brother, but she also didn't make excuses for his behavior. She wanted both of us to understand that family isn't just about blood, it's about commitment, loyalty, and treating each other with respect. The financial situation actually improved after the divorce. Without my stepdad's secret spending and affair-related expenses, we had more money for things that actually mattered. My mom was able to cut back to one job, which meant she was home more often. We started taking small vacations together, something we'd never been able to do when I was younger. Even simple things like family dinners became special because we were all actually present and engaged. Looking back, I sometimes wonder if I should have handled things differently. Maybe I could have confronted him privately first or told my mom sooner. But honestly, I don't think it would have made a difference. He'd already shown his true character by how he treated me, and the affair was just confirmation of what kind of person he really was. If anything, exposing him publicly probably saved my mom from years of additional lies and betrayal. The experience taught me a lot about standing up for yourself and the people you love. It also showed me that sometimes the adults in your life aren't going to protect you, so you have to be willing to protect yourself. I learned that documentation is powerful, that patience can be a weapon, and that sometimes the most effective revenge is simply revealing the truth. My stepdad had spent years making me feel like I didn't belong in his family, like I was just a burden he had to tolerate. But in the end, his own actions proved that he was the one who didn't belong. He'd brought dishonesty, cruelty, and betrayal into our home, and those aren't the values that real families are built on. By exposing him, I didn't just remove a toxic person from our lives. I helped my mom remember what she deserved and what our family could be without him. Years later, my mom remarried someone who treats both me and my half-brother as his own children. He never tried to replace my dad or act like my history didn't matter. Instead, he accepted me as part of the package when he chose to love my mom. That's what real family looks like, not biology or legal documents, but choosing to care for each other even when it's complicated or difficult. My original stepdad tried to reconnect with my half-brother a few times over the years, but his efforts were half-hearted at best. He'd make promises about visits or activities and then cancel at the last minute. Eventually, my brother stopped asking about him altogether. It was sad to watch, but it also confirmed that I'd made the right choice in exposing him when I did. A man who could abandon his own biological child so easily would never have treated me with the respect and love I deserved. The whole experience changed how I approach relationships and trust. I learned to pay attention to how people treat others, especially those who are vulnerable or dependent on them. I also learned that sometimes love means making difficult choices to protect the people you care about, even if those choices are painful in the short term. Most importantly, I learned that you don't have to accept mistreatment just because someone has authority over you or claims to be family. Sometimes people ask me if I feel guilty about destroying my stepdad's marriage and reputation. The honest answer is no, I don't feel guilty at all. He destroyed his own marriage with his choices and actions. I just made sure those choices had consequences. He'd spent years telling me I'd never be part of the real family, making me feel unwanted and unwelcome in my own home. In the end, I made sure he'd never be part of our real family either, and our family is stronger without him.